Welcome to the second lecture on chapter 26. Here I'll be talking about using an enharmonically reinterpreted German augmented sixth chord to effect a modulation between keys. First of all, you need to understand that a German augmented sixth chord is equivalent to a major minor seventh chord. And then you also need to understand how to switch from one to the other in spelling to make them equivalent. Here's a German augmented sixth chord. This is the chord that we would find in the key of E, E major or E minor. The German augmented sixth chord has a major triad, C, E, G, and then it has an augmented sixth, C, A sharp. Basically, the way that the respelling is going to work every time is that either you're going to keep the triad the same and you're going to respell the augmented sixth to turn it into a minor seventh, or the minor seventh to turn it into an augmented sixth. Or, depending on the spelling and where there are sharps and where there are flats, you might find it more convenient to keep the top note the same, but respell the triad enharmonically. But basically, there are these two separate parts. There's the bottom three notes, the lay, do, may, and those go together and they should always spell a major triad. And then there's the top note, which can be written either as an augmented sixth or as a minor seventh above the lowest note. So here I've rewritten this German augmented sixth chord as a C major minor seventh chord. In the key of F major, this would be 5-7. In the key of C major, this would be 5-7 of 4. And in the key of B flat major, this would be 5-7 of 5, just to name a few of the most common uses for a major minor seventh chord. Now, over here, I have a different German augmented sixth chord. Now I have a natural note on top, and I've got some pretty serious accidentals, a lot of flats, on the lower three notes. This would be the German augmented sixth chord in the key of B flat major or B flat minor. In this case, it's probably easier to respell it, keeping the E as an E, not changing this note, but instead changing the spelling of the G flat major triad to be an F sharp major triad. And then over here, I have yet another German augmented sixth chord. And this one is kind of an in-between case. It has a flat on the bottom note and a sharp on the top note. And that suggests that it might work one of two ways. Either I keep the triad the same, A flat, C, E flat, and I respell the augmented sixth as a minor seventh, or I keep the top note, the F sharp, the same, and I respell the A flat major triad as a G sharp major triad, G sharp, B sharp, D sharp. So how would we use a major minor seventh and the enharmonically equivalent German augmented sixth chord to create a modulation? Well, we do it something like this. We could use this chord as a pivot to take us from the key of E minor to the key of, let's say B flat major. Okay? So we could have a chord progression that went something like 1, and then 4-6, and then we would have the German augmented sixth chord. The German augmented sixth chord we expect to resolve with the C going down to B, the A sharp going up to B, and we go either to a cadential 6/4 chord or we go to a B major or B major minor seventh chord. The expectation is that this will resolve as a German augmented sixth. But instead, if we treat it as if it is a C, E, G, B flat chord, now it's a seventh chord, and the B flat needs to resolve down, and that would take us to an F chord. In other words, this chord would be a German augmented sixth in the key of E minor, but enharmonically, it would be a 5-7 of 5 chord in the key of B flat. Maybe it would go to a 5-7 chord here, and then to a 1. In actual music, you won't see both spellings. For a while, it's going to be Roig Frankoli's and my practice to show you both the German sixth and the major minor seventh spelling of the chord so that you can verify that they are enharmonically equivalent. But basically, a composer will choose either the spelling in the first key or the spelling in the second key, and you have to understand the different harmonic implications of the chord in order for you to get the modulation. This is actually very much like the way a pun works. A pun relies on your understanding of a word that is spelled differently but sounds the same in order for you to get the pun or get the joke. For instance, for a while on I-69, and I don't know if the sign is still there, but it was a auto body shop, Coy's Collision, that was advertising its services, and it advertised its services as highly recommended, but recommended was spelled rec-o-mended. The person who wrote this ad was playing on the fact that the word recommended sounds like the word wreck and then the word mended. In other words, this is where you can get your wrecked car mended. And you wouldn't get this pun if you didn't understand that this is an alternative spelling of recommended, R-E-C-O-M-M-E-N-D-E-D. So think about that as we're dealing with different enharmonic spellings of chords that sound the same. The German sixth to major minor seventh equivalence is particularly used for modulations that are a minor second away, that are a major third away, or that are a tritone away. And let me show you why that is. If we start with a German augmented sixth and we turn it into a major minor seventh, as I said before, that major minor seventh chord can be a 5-7 of 5 chord, it can be a 5-7 chord, or it could be a 5-7 of 4 chord. And of course, it could be other things as well. It could be 5-7 of 2, it could be 5-7 of flat 2, it could be all sorts of different things. But these are the most common uses for major minor seventh chords. Now, in what key is C, E, G, B flat, the 5-7 chord? It's in the key of F. And in what key is C, E, G, B flat, the 5-7 of 4? That would be in the key of C major. Using the major minor seventh chord as one of these common major minor seventh chord types gives us a modulation by tritone, or a modulation by minor second, or a modulation by major third. I'd like to look at some examples in your textbook. We're going to look at examples 2611, 2613, and 2614. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Let's take a look at example 26.11. Here we have a modulation from A flat major to C major, and the pivot is shown to you in measure 29. Looking at this chord, it is written as an A flat, C, up here would be an E, and these are F sharps. So it's written as an augmented sixth chord. You need to know that F sharp is the same note as G flat, so that what we have here is either the augmented sixth chord in the key of C major, or it's an A flat major minor seventh chord, which would be 5-7 of 4 in the key of A flat major. Now, there's no saying why Beethoven chose to write these notes as F sharps going towards the key of C major. He could have just as easily written these as G flats and then written G naturals in measure 30. But he chose to use the spelling of the enharmonically equivalent chord, the chord that goes with the second key. Let me play this example and listen for how this chord initially sounds like a secondary dominant that will resolve to 4. And then it's somewhat surprising when instead it goes to a cadential 6/4 and then a 5 chord in the key of C, and the rest of the example finishes off in C and cadences in C. The previous example showed a modulation from A flat major to C major, a key that's a major third away. We're now going to listen to a modulation from the key of A major to the key of B flat major, in other words, a half step away. This music begins in the key of A major. That's not what the key signature is, but you can see that there are a lot of sharps written into the music. When we get to measure 117, we have a chord which is spelled as if it's a 7th chord, F, A, C, E flat. But in the key of A major, we would understand this to be a German augmented 6th chord with the E flat doubling as a D sharp, ready to lead us to E, the dominant. So once again, the spelling reflects where the chord is going rather than the old key that it's coming from, and that's the composer's choice. The composer can choose whether he or she wants to spell it as a German 6th in the old key or a 5/7 chord in the new key. Here's what this sounds like. And finally, we'll look next at example 2614, and this shows another modulation by minor second. This time we're going from a major key, G flat major, to a minor key. And this time the chord that we use to modulate would be a 5/7 in the first key. It's D flat, F, A flat, C flat, except that the note is spelled as a B natural to reflect the fact that it's also a German 6th in the key of F minor. And it resolves as a German 6th with the B natural going up to C and the D flat going down to C. Let's listen to this example.
Zerschmelzen des ganzen Winters Eis, des ganzen Winters Eis.
Okay, and finally, in the third lecture, I'll be talking about enharmonic equivalence between different diminished 7th chords and how that can be used in modulation.